Good afternoon. Welcome to the 14th Annual James R. Souls Lecture on the Constitution and Citizenship. Thank you for joining us today. It's exciting to see so many people here. In fact, I think this may be possibly our largest crowd. It's certainly one of our largest crowds ever, which speaks to the timeliness and importance of today's lecture. We're so grateful that our speaker was able to reschedule this important event, and grateful to you for being here. I'm David Redloff, the James R. Souls Professor of Political Science here at the University of Delaware. I also have the pleasure and privilege to be in my 10th year as chair of the Department of Political Science and International Relations. I've been incredibly fortunate to lead this department of excellent scholars and, importantly, excellent teachers. And one of my favorite things that I get to do is this annual lecture. The James R. Souls Lecture on the Constitution and Citizenship was endowed by students, friends, and colleagues of Dr. James Souls upon his retirement from the university. This lecture is an ongoing recognition of the role he played in our department, the University of Delaware, and our state over his many, many years of service. His influence continues today, even as one of his students rose to the White House, and countless others have led consequential lives in public service within and beyond Delaware. This year, we're fortunate to be welcoming Delaware Congresswoman Sarah McBride as the 2025 James R. Souls Lecturer. Her talk is entitled, "Freedom to Hope in an Age of Cynicism." Following Congresswoman McBride's talk, several of our political science and international students will ask her several questions. Once that Q&A session is done, we'll adjourn to the reception in the lobby, to which all are invited. Before we get too far in, though, I need to recognize some special guests who are with us today, including Delaware State Auditor Lydia York, Vice Chancellor Paul Fioravante Jr., Delaware Representative Mara Gorman, UD Trustee and Henry Francis DuPont Professor Deborah Norris, Gary Henry, Interim Vice Provost and Dean of the Graduate College, Michael Chavez, Dean of the Honors College, Chad Gasta, Associate Dean, College of Arts and Sciences, and Dan Smith, Associate Dean, College of Arts and Sciences. Unfortunately, Interim President Laura Carlson and Dean Caleb Everett could not join us today because they are at a celebration for the 10th year of the UD World Scholars Program, which is an amazing opportunity that many of our students get a chance to take advantage of. So we miss them, but we know they would have been here if they could have. We are also particularly privileged to have Professor Souls' daughter, Catherine Souls Pomeroy, here today. And I want to recognize as a group the many students of Professor Souls who have joined us today, as well as individually my colleague and predecessor as the James R. Souls Professor, Dr. Joseph Pica. Now, I have a few more people to recognize, in particular the students. I want to recognize the recent Souls Citizenship Stipend awardees who received funding from the James R. Souls Endowment to support their work in community engagement. These awards support both undergraduate and graduate students as they learn more about public service. This year's undergraduate awardees include Hoda Bazi, Khadija Durrami, Navita Prabhu, and Colin Thrift. The graduate student awardees include Richmond Aguiarca, Gunter Hogg-Pavlak, Arafat Rahman, Ume Salma Taran, Ronald Trenchy, and Shivani Pandey. Join me, please, in recognizing their awards. And finally, and perhaps most importantly in terms of recognitions, I want to recognize and thank, just absolutely thank Kelly O'Rourke and the CAS Events team, along with our political science staff, Barbara Ford, Lisa Berry, and Monique Whittle, for the work they've done to make this whole event happen. We could not have done this without them. Many of you in this audience have made this lecture and many of our other civic engagement activities possible with your generous support. Because of you, we can honor Professor Souls' important contributions through the James R. Souls Citizenship Endowment. The endowment funds a number of programs in the Department of Political Science and International Relations, including both the undergraduate and graduate student civic engagement stipends, as well as this annual lecture. We're very, very grateful for your support. And now it's my pleasure to call on Ed Friel, a member of our Souls Lecture Committee, to give us some insight into Dr. Souls and his lasting contributions to the university and to the state. Ed?
David, this is our biggest crowd. No question. This is just really, really wonderful. A little bit of context. I knew Jim well. I met Jim in 1968. I was his grad assistant in 1969, and I was his campaign manager in 1974. And the family honored me with the opportunity of delivering his eulogy 15 years ago. So I knew Jim well, and my job today is to say a few words about Dr. Souls and to share a short video. And I know David is going to be introducing our guest in a minute, but I would like to share a personal reflection on today's event. The Souls Lecture began 14 years ago. Since its beginning, many of our state's leaders and a number of nationally recognized experts have spoken about our Constitution and civic engagement. I think today is a particularly important time to reflect on our Constitution and the freedoms it guarantees. And while we are well beyond Constitution Day, with a sense of pride, we will celebrate in 2 days the day that Delaware became the first state to ratify the Constitution. So there you go, Delaware. Our first two speakers in the series were Joe Biden and Tom Carper. They represented the best of our state's leaders of their generation. Today, we will hear from Sarah McBride, representing a new generation of our state's leaders. Sarah, I look forward to your message today with anticipation and excitement. Jim Souls was a professor of political science at the University of Delaware for over 35 years. He was recognized as a great teacher, receiving the Excellence in Teaching Award twice. He was also the only faculty member that I can remember who was chosen by a senior class to be their commencement speaker. Jim's fields of expertise included the Constitution, the judiciary, and American government and politics. To great acclaim, he performed a one-man performance as James Madison all over the country, even appearing on PBS. Even more, Jim was revered as a mentor to his students and generations of our state's government leaders. He was legendary for his commitment to his students throughout their lives. And as David mentioned, there are a number of you in the audience today, and it's great to see so many of you here. Former Souls lecturers, such as former Chief Justice Leo Strine, Senator Tom Carper, current Delaware Chief Justice Colin Seitz, and Federal Appeals Court Judge Len Stark, all were mentored by Jim Souls. Soon after Jim's passing in 2010, a number of friends and colleagues were discussing how to best remember Jim. We came up with the idea of connecting Jim's legacy with the university's annual recognition of the adoption of our nation's Constitution. So today, this afternoon, represents the 14th anniversary of a Blue Hen celebration of the Constitution and one of its greatest admirers, Jim Souls. And now we would like to share a short video about Jim's remarkable career. Josh, take it away.
He's raised up a whole generation, maybe 2 generations of young people with the idea that they need to serve and they should be citizens.
He was very engaging, and his spirit was, you can do this.
He was interested. He cared about you as a student and also as a person.
Jim could teach 5-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 85-year-olds, because he knew how to interact with them and respected them.
I referred to him as one of the university's great statesmen. What he did was carry the sense of our mission out into the community.
He promoted being an active citizen by his example of running for office himself. There's so many people that became elected officials in Delaware that were students of Jim's.
When I met Jim Souls, I said, this is why I'm here. I had a chance to work in his campaign to serve as the as a volunteer, as the treasurer, fundraiser, of all the people that I've known in my life who helped make it possible for me to have these opportunities. But beyond my parents, who gave birth to, brought me into the world, it would be Jim Souls.
Dr. Souls helped me to get an internship at the Attorney General's office in Wilmington. Dr. Souls' influence was, if that's your passion, that's what you should do.
Dr. Souls was nonpartisan. Some of his best students, I'm sure, were Republicans and Democrats. So that didn't matter to him.
Such a shining role model of someone who did so much for so many others.
What I learned from him about citizenship is to give back. He would always say to us, "Don't thank me, pass it on."
A consummate professor. He met every student where they were. No answer was really a wrong answer, so a lot of diverse views.
He had ways of reaching them about their own issues, and that's what he did in class. He would run the gamut and show these kids that this matters.
He was a very rigorous and demanding instructor, but he started always from the assumption, right, that people could accomplish so much.
The more time you spent around him, the more excited you were about the opportunities in the world and your chance to make a difference.
Instantly grabbed his students in to say, "Be part of this journey with me." Years after his life ended, he's still beloved. He's still with us.
As much as Jim loved his students, there was no one he loved more, I think, than Ada Lee.
He hit the jackpot with Ada Lee Souls. Brilliant, beautiful, warm, loving woman.
And he totally supported her getting involved in politics and becoming, you know, a state representative. And she was an extremely effective state representative for many, many years.
He and Ada Lee, they're a wonderful team. I learned so much from them, and I just love them.
Jim was authentic. He was the real deal. He believed that that's how we should all be as citizen scholars.
In a college academic environment where everything can be so focused on research and publishing, his legacy is his impact on his students.
Jim was always great about encouraging students to go learn about government from the inside. And so the fact that one of the legacies of Dr. Souls is the financial support for internships for students, I think, is a very fitting legacy.
He really created a lot of disciples in a lot of ways to go out and do good, because we all have an obligation to one another, and I believe that that's his legacy.
I think we lead by our example. It's not do as I say, but do as I do. And he was a guy that really walked the talk. And that's one of the many things that I learned from him.
I was at his funeral, and all the luminaries of the state of Delaware were in attendance, because that's who he was. Everybody knew he was Mr. Delaware, and a great teacher, a great citizen himself.
Thank you, Ed, and to all who helped with the video tribute. It really does give you a sense of who Jim Souls was and why, these many years later, he is still important to our department, to our university, and to our state. Our lecture celebrates not only Dr. Souls, but also Constitution Day, held each year on September 17th, recognizing the ratification of the Constitution. As you know, this year we're a bit later than we expected, but the recognition of the importance of our Constitution and Delaware's role as the first state remains. As we think about our Constitution and the founding of the Republic, we should remember that what was done in the years 1776 through 1787 had never been done before. The United States fought a long and bloody battle to determine its own future, and won against the most powerful nation in the world. The first government our founders established turned out to be inadequate to the task of knitting together 13 disparate states, each with its own economy, culture, and political traditions. Despite winning independence, this was not yet one nation. So in 1787, delegates gathered in Philadelphia from across the new nation to amend the Articles of Confederation to fix its obvious deficiencies. they quickly decided that an entirely new system needed to be invented. It wasn't easy. The compromises required to get every state on board, to get unanimous agreement, were not trivial, and some of them continue to haunt us today. The Constitution they invented was flawed, but it contained within itself the potential for expansion and improvement, a potential that has been realized in fits and starts over the years. Even with those compromises, the founders were clearly guided by a sense of hope that the people of this country could overcome the challenges and become a single nation. In many ways, their hopes were fulfilled. In many others, perhaps, we're still on that road, and it has often been a bumpy one. The Constitution provides guiding principles, but is very short on specifics. How we understand it and how we have built on the founders' hopes has changed across generations. Even so, our history has generally been one of increasing inclusion, even as some have fought against extending the Constitution's rights and freedoms to all people. The genius of the Constitution is how the same document that once counted some people as less than human and ignored others entirely has been amended and extended by succeeding generations without losing its basic promise, even as we know there are still historical wrongs that must continue to be righted. Today, though, we are in a new battle over what the Constitution means and who counts under it. Rather than the extension of constitutional protections and continuing efforts to right historic wrongs, we are seeing serious efforts to roll them back. We are in a moment that seems very bleak to many, one in which some appear bent on reducing who counts and who is protected. It's a time of worry that has been fed by cynicism. That cynicism has been exploited by those who wish to remake our nation into something it has never been, an exclusionary place meant for only people like us and no others. From a nation offering hope to the world's tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, some seek to redefine our Constitution as only having meaning for a select few. Maybe even only the select few it originally protected at its founding and nobody else. I worry that this cynicism has taken hold, and particularly worry that this cynicism has taken hold among young people. And in fact, a recent survey shows a tremendous level of cynicism about our government, about our capabilities, our ability to do anything among 18 to 30-year-olds. I worry that young people in particular may no longer believe the future can be better than the past and that our strength lies in our diversity. It's easy to see the failures of government, and of course there have been failures. And it's easy to see them, though, as evidence that nothing can be done right. I worry that those fears are being exploited for the benefit of a few. But I also believe it is possible to have hope. Hope that our better angels will prevail and that we in our Constitution will come through these times stronger and ready to face the next challenges of the 21st century. Our speaker today, Congresswoman Sarah McBride, has chosen to focus her lecture on this question of hope in an age of cynicism. Congresswoman McBride was elected as Delaware's at-large representative in 2024 after serving 4 years in the Delaware State Senate. She is a lifetime Wilmington resident and has had a focus on public service and advocacy throughout her career. One of her many signature accomplishments while a state senator was passing paid family and medical leave in Delaware, which goes into full effect next month and will have a significant positive impact on Delaware working people. In her first term in Congress, Representative McBride has continued to focus on making life more affordable, protecting programs families rely on, and finding common ground to getting things done for Delaware. I am thrilled to present Congresswoman Sarah McBride to give the 2025 Souls Lecture.
That was great. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. What a beautiful sight to see. David, thank you for those incredibly poignant remarks and for your kind introduction. It is an honor to be here at the University of Delaware and to be delivering this year's Souls Lecture. I want to start on a note of gratitude. I want to begin by just expressing my gratitude to everyone here who is a Delawarean for entrusting me with the privilege of a lifetime in representing you in the United States House of Representatives. It means the world to me, and the weight of this moment, the weight of this responsibility is certainly not lost on me. Of course, I want to acknowledge my friend Ed Friel. Thank you for your leadership, for your friendship, and for your mentorship. I never had the privilege of having a real conversation with Jim Soules, but in some ways I feel like I'm a grand mentee since Ed Friel mentored me. And I would not be standing here if not for the friendship and support of an incredible Delawarean in Ed Friel. To Catherine, Jim's daughter, where's Catherine? Oh, there she is. First of all, thank you very much for providing me your mother's pin. I will wear it with pride. And I just want to thank you for carrying on the legacy of your parents, both of your parents, and for being here this evening. Your father was a public servant and a true model of democratic citizenship. And it feels particularly humbling to stand at this podium knowing that the first Jim Soules lecturer was Delaware's own favorite son, Joe Biden. I also want to recognize all of the students who are here tonight, more than 200 students, a reason for hope in and of itself. I especially want to acknowledge the Jim Soules awardees, both the undergrad and grad students who are here today. I can't wait to answer some of your questions and to continue to see all that you do. The fact that there are so many students here provides me a lot of comfort. And I just want to say specifically to them, thank you for not only taking time out of your Friday to join us this afternoon, but for believing enough in the possibilities in our politics to be interested in joining us today and to be interested in studying it. I think a lot of times we hear that young people are the future, but the reality is that almost all of the change that this country has experienced over its 250-year history has been driven by young people. You are not the future. You are the drivers of change right now. And that is because throughout history, we see that young people have a unique gravity to their voice. And that is the gravity of history. Because when you speak, when you lift your voice and speak out about your passions and your beliefs, you are speaking from a place of history. Not the history of the past, but the history that remains to be written. Because you, as young people, will be the ones that write the history books of tomorrow. You will get to decide who was right and who was wrong in this moment. And people in my job, we know that. And that is an incredible gravity and power to your voice that throughout our history has changed this world, and I know it will continue to deliver change here in Delaware, across the country, and globally. While I know this lecture typically falls on Constitution Day, and I very much appreciate Kelly and the events team's flexibility in bringing us all together this evening, it is fitting that we now gather ahead of Delaware Day. If you follow me on social media, you will see some pretty excruciatingly cringe content over the next several days as I celebrate Delaware Day as the statriot that I am, because we all know that Delaware is objectively the greatest state in the history of the Union. That's always a very easy applause line when I'm in Delaware. But as I serve in Congress, there's no question that our Constitution, which Delaware helped to forge, is under heightened scrutiny. Our system of separation of powers, of checks and balances, has been undermined. Rights have been chilled, and the rule of law has been diminished. But today, I don't want to focus on any particular amendment under threat or clause that is being ignored. I want to speak about a force that is more fundamental and foundational to our Constitution, the fuel of our politics and our progress. Today, I want to speak with you about a word that has fallen out of fashion in this country. I want to speak about hope, not as a slogan or a simple sentiment, but as a democratic necessity, as an active ingredient in citizenship. Because citizenship is not always easy, and hope is not always organic. We live in an age when cynicism comes cheap. Scroll through your social media, turn on cable news, or just sit around the Thanksgiving dinner table, and you'll hear it. Nothing can get better. Everything's broken. Everything's rigged. And I understand it. Cynicism is tempting. It protects us from disappointment. It offers the short-term satisfaction of saying, "See, I told you so." But in democracy, cynicism is not neutral. It's corrosive. Because here is the truth. We cannot claim to believe in democracy and in the same moment write off half of our country. We cannot give up in our hope that things can get better and in our hope in one another. We cannot give up on politics as a means for progress. We cannot say we believe in democracy and cut off conversation across disagreement. Right now, every force seems to be pulling us apart. All of the evidence, our information bubbles, our algorithms, our politics, is driving a wedge between us, rewarding our fears and destroying our faith in one another. This is the danger that we see in our politics today. Political leaders in Washington that are not content to just debate ideas, but seek to intimidate dissent. People who use cruelty as the currency of their corruption, that govern not with the humility of democracy, but with the hubris of authoritarianism, and a culture that divides not only our politicians, but our fellow citizens into allies or enemies. Indeed, to me, the greatest threat to our Constitution in this moment does not come from any individual politician or individual action. It comes from a crisis of hope, rooted in the fear that we no longer have the individual or collective capacity to meet the scope and the scale of the challenges that we face. A crisis of faith in our ability to see and hear and ultimately persuade one another through peaceful dialogue. It's a crisis of hope that has led many to give up on democracy itself, to fall prey to the allure of absolutism that is only possible in authoritarianism, to the arms of an autocrat, or to the dystopia of disillusionment. The factors that contributed to this crisis are real and legitimate. Anger that government hasn't done enough to see us and respect us and deliver for us. Fear that the future will not be better than today. Frustration that everyday Americans continue to play by the rules, while those who break them seem to amass more power and more wealth. But as David mentioned, it is a crisis that is being exploited by the few in our country. And it is one that has undermined the foundation of our politics and our government. This isn't the first time when the ground beneath our democracy has been unsteady. Through a civil war and a Great Depression, through bigotry and backlash, our democracy has been pressure tested before. And yet, in each instance, it has come through it stronger and truer. In the most extreme circumstances, those challenges erupted into violence, requiring previous generations to put their lives on the line in defense of freedom and in the effort to deepen it. But in every instance, at a minimum, those challenges required all of us to sacrifice something simpler and easier: our own comfort. No matter the era, every generation has been required to be in common cause with those who sometimes vote and think differently than they do in order to defend freedom and to ultimately deepen it. Every previous generation has understood that progress requires building coalitions, even unlikely ones. That painful, often difficult conversations across disagreement are not a bug of democracy, they are a feature of it. There has never been a movement for social progress that was a monolith. They were coalitions, messy, diverse, imperfect, impure, divided on strategy, but united in common purpose. And they succeeded not because one side shamed the other side into submission, but because enough people were persuaded. In my own lifetime, I think about the example of marriage equality. 20 years ago this year, in the shadow of marriage bans passing across the country, and amidst commentators wondering if people in my own community and the rights of my own community cost my party the last election. Amidst all of that, in 2005, LGBTQ people in this country had a choice. Do we turn inward? Do we reject and write off the Americans who had just overwhelmingly voted in red states and blue states alike against marriage equality? Do we fall prey to an understandable bitterness and anger? Instead, we chose a different path. My community rejected the short-term comfort of preaching to our own choir and instead found the courage to grow our congregation. We used the ruthless survival skills of an LGBTQ kid in Florida or in South Dakota who did not have the luxury of prioritizing purity and perfection over goodwill and good intentions. We met people where they were. We welcomed imperfect allies. We created room for people to grow, not through shunning or shaming, but with space and with grace. And because of that strategic courage and disciplined perseverance, we transformed public opinion. We won elections. We started to pass marriage equality in state legislatures and at the ballot box. And within just 10 years of that inflection point, the promise of equal dignity under our Constitution became a reality for same-sex couples in every corner of this country. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fair. It wasn't easy. But it was worth it. That is the possibility that comes with persuasion. That's the power of hope. Optimism and hope are different things. Optimism can change with circumstances. You look at chance, you look at context, and you can lose optimism. But hope is something more fundamental and more transformational. It's also the kind of progress that we see that highlights the responsibility that comes with our freedom of speech. Because free speech is not just about the right to shout into the void. It's the responsibility to summon hope in order to listen, to engage, and to ultimately persuade. And look, I'm not naive to the challenges that we face right now. I know this moment feels different than 20 years ago. I know when we turn on cable news or open social media, it can feel like we are so divided that persuasion is pointless. We've been pushed through the mobility of our lives and the technology that we live on into silos and echo chambers. The few examples that we see outside of our own side are often the outrageous examples that go viral. But I am here to tell you that while the media we consume can impact real life, it is not representative of it. One of the blessings I have of serving in elected office is that I am forced out of my comfort zone. I'm forced out of my safe spaces. 42% of my constituents voted for Donald Trump. This state, as you know, is urban, suburban, and rural. I representing more people in the House of Representatives than any other voting member, people in red areas, purple areas, and blue areas. And I'm going to tell you something that might feel unbelievable. when you turn on the news or open social media. And that is, regardless of how people voted in the last election, most people are good and decent people. We can tap their better angels if we just allow ourselves to see them. If we're courageous enough to foster the closeness that has made so much of our progress as a country possible. Yes, real disagreements exist. And politics can often bring out the worst in many of us. I have a front row seat to it every single day in Washington. But I have seen that we are not as divided as the algorithms make it seem. Whenever our system of government has been tested, when our bonds of affection have been strained, we have faced as a country a fork in the road. A question in that moment. Do we destroy or do we build? Do we destroy our union, our Constitution, and our democracy, or do we continue to build a more perfect one? These pressure points, they come every 80 years or so. When the living memory of the previous inflection point fades as the last generation that remembers it disappears. When living memory of the revolution faded, we had a civil war. When living memory of that civil war disappeared and a Great Depression raged, many in America called for a dictator to emulate the strongmen of Europe. And now, as we lose the last of the greatest generation, we are once again seeing destroyers calling into question our democracy. Destroyers, they thrive in a culture of cynicism, and they exploit it. They want to destroy our government and sell it for parts. They want to destroy our attention span and then mine what little remains for advertising dollars. They want to destroy housing and healthcare so that they can consolidate power by doling out the scraps. They want to destroy jobs and the American worker by unleashing unregulated technology that leaves the rich richer and everyone else behind. They want to destroy our sense of commonality, so we give up on one another. And aided by algorithms and authoritarians, they want to destroy our faith in democracy's capacity to deliver. 80 years since World War II, as the lessons learned of that era fade from living memory, we are once again at a fork in the road. We are once again at a fork in the road for our union, as states and as people, for our Constitution and for our democracy. And just as previous generations have been called to do before, we face a question in this moment. We must decide whether we will turn inward or reach outward, whether we will choose grace over grievance, faith in one another or fear of the other. We must decide whether we will destroy or whether we will build that more perfect union. At this moment of choosing for our country, we must decide whether we truly believe in democracy. Not as a talking point, not as an abstraction, not when only things are going well for us. Whether we genuinely believe in it. Because democracy can only exist if we maintain our hope and our faith in other people's capacity to change. But as we enter 2026, to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the birth of this country, as we reflect on 2.5 centuries, well, we have 2.5 centuries of evidence that it is possible. I think about it every single time I step onto the floor of the House of Representatives, as your member of Congress, into a chamber that the House moved to in 1857, just before the Civil War. I think about all of the progress that had been built in that chamber, because that is the space where the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment were passed, where slavery was abolished and equal protection was guaranteed, That is the room where women got the right to vote. That is the space where Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid were created. The chairs that we sit in are the chairs that my predecessors sat in to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. The history is truly heavy in the air. And each time I am in that space, I think about all of the ingredients that made that progress possible. That the answer to hate is not more hate. That love invites people in, and that hope, joyful, infectious, and disciplined hope, is the only way forward. Thank you all very much. It's an honor to be with you this afternoon, and it's a privilege to be in this work with you all. Thank you.